Jill finally tells Billy about his birth father, the young and the restless spoilers. Fan-fiction/speculative story. Genoa City had always been a place where secrets refused to stay buried. For decades, the Abbott family had survived betrayals, business wars, broken marriages, unexpected alliances, and shocking revelations. But there were some secrets that were different. Some secrets did not simply change relationships, they changed the way a person understood their entire life. And on this particular morning, Jill Abbott was carrying one of those secrets. For years, Jill had convinced herself that silence was protection. She had told herself that Billy Abbott did not need to know every painful detail about his past. She had told herself that revealing the truth would only reopen old wounds. Most importantly, she had believed that she could take the secret to her grave. But something had changed. Jill had watched Billy struggle with questions about who he really was. She had seen him make mistakes, fight with family members, and repeatedly search for a sense of belonging. And now Jill could no longer pretend that the truth belonged only to her. Billy deserved to know. His birth father was not the man he had always believed, and Jill was finally ready to say the words. A secret Jill could no longer carry. Jill sat alone in her office, staring at an old photograph. It was faded around the edges, but she knew every face in it. She had looked at that photograph hundreds of times over the years, maybe thousands, but today it looked different. Jill slowly opened the drawer of her desk and pulled out a small envelope. Inside was an old letter, a letter she had kept hidden for years. Her hands trembled slightly as she read it again. She already knew what it said. She didn't need to read it, but she did anyway. Because she needed to remind herself why she had kept this secret for so long. The letter contained a name, the name of Billy's biological father. Jill closed her eyes. How do I tell my son this? The question escaped her in a whisper. She had imagined this conversation many times. In some versions, Billy screamed at her. In others, he simply walked away. Sometimes he refused to believe her. Sometimes he asked why she had waited so long. But Jill knew the real conversation would probably be even harder, because Billy would not just be learning the identity of his birth father. He would be questioning everything Jill had ever told him about his childhood, and Jill knew she would have to answer every question. Billy notices. Something is wrong. Billy arrived at the Abbott estate later that morning. He immediately noticed that something was different. Jill was usually confident. Even when things went wrong, she had a way of maintaining control. Today, however, she looked distracted. Billy stopped in the doorway. Mom? Jill looked up. Billy. He studied her face. What happened? Nothing. Billy gave her a skeptical look. That's not convincing. Jill forced a smile. I just have something I need to talk to you about. Billy's expression changed. That sounds serious. It is. He sat down. Okay, I'm listening. Jill remained standing for several seconds. She looked toward the window, then toward the photograph on the desk. Finally, she looked directly at her son. Billy, there's something about your past that I should have told you a long time ago. Billy frowned. What kind of something? Jill took a breath. Something about your birth. Billy immediately became uncomfortable. My birth? Yes. You've told me everything about that. No, Jill whispered. I haven't. Silence filled the room. Billy stared at her. What are you saying? Jill walked toward the desk and picked up the old envelope. I've spent years telling myself that keeping this secret was the right thing to do. Billy slowly stood. Mom, what secret? Jill's eyes filled with tears. The man you believed was your biological father. She stopped. Billy's face became pale. What about him? Jill swallowed. He wasn't your birth father. Billy stared at her. For several seconds he said nothing. Then he laughed nervously. That's not funny. I'm not joking. Billy's expression hardened. Then explain. Jill knew there was no going back. The truth is, I lied to you. Billy demands answers. Billy turned away. He walked toward the window, running a hand through his hair. All these years? Jill nodded. All these years. Why? I was trying to protect you. Billy spun around. Protect me from what? From the truth. That's not an answer. I know. Then give me one. Jill's voice shook. I was afraid of what would happen if you knew. Billy stared at her. You didn't trust me with my own life? That isn't what I meant. It sure sounds like it. Jill moved closer. Billy, please. No. He stepped back. Don't ask me to calm down. Don't ask me to understand. You just told me that the man I thought was my father wasn't my father. Jill nodded. And now you're telling me you've known this my entire life. I've known for many years. Billy's eyes narrowed. Who is he? Jill looked down. Mom. His name. Jill finally said it, and Billy froze. The name hit him harder than he expected. He had heard it before. It was a name connected to a complicated chapter of Jill's past, a man whose history with Jill had been kept deliberately vague. Billy slowly shook his head. No. Jill nodded. Yes. You're saying he's my biological father? Yes. Billy sat down. He looked completely stunned. Why didn't you tell me? Jill sat opposite him. Because I was scared. Of what? Of losing you. Billy looked at her. You thought telling me who my father was would make me stop loving you? No. Then what? Jill's eyes filled with tears. I thought you might start hating me. The pain behind Jill's silence. Billy stared at his mother. Why would I hate you? Because I made choices for you. You did. I know. That's not something you can deny. I won't. Jill wiped away a tear. I was young. I was frightened. I thought I knew what was best, and by the time I realized how complicated everything had become, too many years had passed. Billy's voice softened slightly. So, you kept going? Yes. Year after year. Yes. Why now? Jill looked at the envelope. Because I found something. Billy immediately became suspicious. What? Evidence. She handed him the letter. Billy opened it. He read slowly. His expression changed with every line. This is real? Yes. How long have you had it? Long enough. Billy looked up. And you've never shown this to anyone? No? Not even family? No. Billy stood again. He walked across the room. There's something else. Jill knew exactly what he meant. Yes. You haven't told me everything. No. Billy turned toward her. What aren't you telling me? Jill hesitated. The man you believed was your father knew. Billy's eyes widened. He knew? Yes. And he never told me? Jill shook her head. Billy's anger returned. So everyone knew except me. Not everyone. But enough people knew. Jill nodded. Yes. Billy laughed bitterly. That's unbelievable. Billy's identity crisis. Billy left the Abbott estate and walked through Genoa City without any real destination. His mind was racing. Every memory from his childhood suddenly felt different. The stories he had been told, the family photographs, the moments when he had wondered why certain people behaved strangely around him. The times Jill had changed the subject whenever he asked about his birth. It all seemed connected now. Billy eventually found himself at Crimson Lights. He sat in a corner, staring at his coffee. Someone approached. You're looking like you just got hit by a truck. Billy looked up. Not far from the truth. The conversation did not go much further. Billy wasn't ready to explain. How could he? He didn't even understand it himself. He pulled out his phone and stared at Jill's name. He wanted to call her. He wanted to demand more answers. He also wanted to tell her that he hated what she had done. But beneath all of that anger was something else. Fear. What if learning the truth changed him? What if his biological father had been a terrible person? What if the truth about his conception was darker than Jill had admitted? And what if the man he had spent his entire life believing was his father had known all along? Billy suddenly understood something. This wasn't just a family secret. This was an identity crisis. Jill makes a second confession. Back at the Abbott estate, Jill knew Billy would return, and when he did, she wanted to be ready. She gathered every document she had, every letter, every photograph, every piece of evidence. She placed everything on the table. When Billy entered, Jill stood. "You came back." "I need the whole story." Jill nodded. "You deserve it." Billy sat. "Start at the beginning." Jill took a deep breath. "Before you were born, I was involved with your biological father." Billy listened. "We cared about each other, but the relationship was complicated." "How complicated?" "More complicated than I ever admitted." "Was there another person?" Jill hesitated. "Yes." Billy nodded slowly. "So there was a triangle?" "Yes." "And you chose the other man?" "At the time, I believed I was making the right choice." Billy stared at her. "But you knew who my father was?" "Yes." "And you deliberately let me believe someone else was?" "Yes." Billy closed his eyes. Jill continued. "I told myself that I was giving you stability." "Did my biological father want me?" Jill's eyes filled with tears. "Yes." Billy looked shocked. "He wanted to be part of your life." "Then why wasn't he?" "Because I stopped him." Billy's face fell. "You kept my father away from me?" "I did." "Why?" "Because I was afraid." "Afraid of him?" "Afraid of what would happen to you." Billy stared at her. "Was he dangerous?" Jill shook her head. "Not in the way you're thinking." "Then what?" "He was unpredictable. His life was complicated. There were people around him I didn't trust." Billy leaned back. "So you made the decision?" "Yes." "Without asking me?" "You were a child." "Exactly." The family starts to notice news of Billy's confrontation with Jill did not stay private for long. In Genoa City, secrets had a way of traveling. Someone noticed Billy's anger. Someone else noticed Jill's distress. Soon, members of the Abbott family began asking questions. Jack was one of the first to confront Jill. "What happened?" Jill looked exhausted. "I told Billy the truth." Jack immediately understood that this was serious. "About his father?" Jill nodded. Jack sighed. "Jill, I know." "Are you sure this was the right time?" "There was never going to be a right time." Jack looked at her. "How did Billy react?" "Exactly as you would expect." "Angry?" "Devastated." Jack sat beside her. "You kept this secret for years." "I thought I was protecting him." "And now?" "Now I realize that sometimes protecting someone from the truth only makes the truth more painful." Billy finds an unexpected ally. Billy eventually confided in someone he trusted. He didn't want advice. He wanted someone to listen. He explained everything: the revelation, Jill's confession, the hidden letters, the biological father he never knew, the person who had known. When he finished, the other person looked at him and said something simple. "You're still Billy." Billy looked confused. "What?" "Your father doesn't define you." Billy stared at the floor. "I know that." "Do you?" He didn't answer. "Your life is still your life. Your memories are still your memories. Your choices are still yours." Billy slowly nodded. "But it feels like someone took a piece of my history away from me." "That's because they did." Billy looked up. "But you can decide what happens next?" That sentence stayed with him. Because Billy realized something. He couldn't change what Jill had done. He couldn't change the past. but he could decide what to do with the truth. The birth father returns. Meanwhile, Jill received a phone call. She looked at the number. Her expression immediately changed. She answered cautiously. "Hello?" A familiar voice came through. Jill said nothing. The caller asked whether Billy knew. Jill closed her eyes. "Yes." A pause. "You told him?" "I had to." The voice became emotional. "Does he know who I am?" "Yes." Another pause. "Does he hate me?" Jill looked toward the window. "I don't know." The caller asked whether he could meet Billy. Jill hesitated. "Not yet." "Why?" "Because Billy needs time. I've already waited years. And that's my fault." "No, Jill, it's not only your fault." Jill's eyes filled with tears. She knew this conversation was only the beginning, because now the secret was no longer hers. Billy knew, and eventually the man who had spent years living outside Billy's life would have to face his son. Billy learns. There is more. Billy returned to Jill later that evening. "I spoke to someone." Jill looked nervous. "Who?" "I don't know if I should tell you." "Why?" "Because they said something that made me realize you still haven't told me everything." Jill went silent. Billy stared at her. "There is another secret." Jill sighed. "Yes?" Billy shook his head. "Of course there is." "I didn't want to overwhelm you." "You already did." Jill nodded. "You're right." Billy sat down. "What is it?" Jill slowly revealed the final piece. "Your biological father has been alive all these years." Billy's expression changed. "I know." Jill froze. "What?" "I know." "How?" "I got a message." Jill's eyes widened. "He contacted you?" Billy nodded. "He wants to meet me." Jill sat down. For the first time, Jill looked genuinely frightened. Billy noticed. "Mom?" She looked at him. "I need to know something." "What?" "Why are you afraid of me meeting him?" Jill didn't answer immediately. Then she whispered, "Because there are things about him that I haven't told you." Billy stood. "What things?" Jill looked toward the old photograph. "Things that could change everything. A new chapter begins." The following morning, Billy stood outside a quiet cafe. He had agreed to meet his biological father. He didn't know what to expect. Would there be an apology, an explanation, anger, regret, or simply silence? Billy checked his phone. No message. He looked toward the entrance. Then the door opened. An older man walked inside. Billy immediately recognized him from the photographs Jill had shown him. Their eyes met. Neither man spoke. For several seconds, they simply stared at each other. Finally, the man said, "Billy." Billy swallowed. "You know my name. I've known your name your entire life." Billy's voice became cold. "Then why weren't you there?" The man looked down. "Because I was told I couldn't be." Billy's jaw tightened. "By my mother." "Yes." "Did you fight for me?" The man looked at him. "Every way I knew how." "Then why did you give up?" "I didn't." Billy stared at him. "Then why did I grow up without you?" The man had no easy answer, and Billy realized that this meeting wasn't going to give him everything he wanted, but perhaps it would finally give him something he had been missing. The truth. Jill's greatest fear. Jill watched from a distance. She had not intended to interfere. She knew Billy needed this moment. But as she watched her son talking to the man who was his biological father, she realized something. She had spent years afraid that the truth would destroy Billy. Instead, the truth might finally give him peace. Jill had made a terrible mistake. She had confused control with protection. She had believed that if she controlled the truth, she could control the consequences. But secrets didn't disappear. They grew. And eventually, They demanded to be heard. Billy walked away from the cafe several minutes later. He approached Jill. She expected anger. Instead, Billy simply looked at her. "I don't forgive you." Jill nodded. "I understand. But I don't hate you either." Jill's eyes filled with tears. Billy continued. "I need time. You can have all the time you need. And I need answers. You'll get them. All of them." Jill nodded. "All of them." Billy walked away. Jill watched him go. For the first time in years, she felt something she hadn't allowed herself to feel. Relief. The secret was finally out. But Jill knew this was only the beginning. What happens next? Billy's discovery is about to send shockwaves through Genoa City, because knowing the identity of his birth father is only the first piece of the puzzle. The bigger question is why Jill went to such extraordinary lengths to hide the truth. What really happened between Jill and Billy's biological father? Why was he kept away? Who else knew? And perhaps most importantly, what does Billy's biological father want now? There may also be documents that Jill hasn't revealed, letters Billy has never seen, old conversations that could completely change his understanding of his childhood. And there is one possibility that could make the entire situation even more complicated. Billy's biological father may know something about Jill's past that she desperately wants to keep hidden. If that secret comes out, Billy may discover that his mother's confession was only the beginning. The emotional fallout. Billy's relationships with the people closest to him could also change. Some family members may defend Jill. Others may accuse her of going too far. Billy may find himself caught between two families, the family that raised him and the family connected to his biological history. And that could force him to ask the most painful question of all. Who am I? But perhaps Billy will eventually discover that the answer doesn't come from his DNA. It comes from the life he chooses to live. His birth father can explain where he came from. Jill can explain why she made the choices she made. But only Billy can decide where he goes next. And Jill knows that. For years, she controlled Billy's past. Now she has to let Billy control his future. The final scene could end with Jill alone in her office once again. She opens the same drawer. The old photograph is still there, but underneath it is another envelope, one she hasn't shown Billy. Jill picks it up. She stares at the handwriting. Her face turns pale. Then she whispers, "Not yet." She puts the envelope back. But this time, Jill doesn't lock the drawer, because she knows Billy will eventually find it. And when he does, the truth about his birth may become even more explosive. The next chapter of Billy Abbott's life has begun, and Genoa City may never look at Jill and Billy the same way again.